Hello and welcome everybody to this JavaScript marathon training. Hello, my name is Simone and I'm a senior engineer at Disto Labs. You can find me on Twitter using the hashtag mentioned at the bottom of the screen. And please do not hesitate to contact me and get in touch if you got any question, feedback, or concern, even after the video's been recorded and saved on YouTube. Before we start, it's time to thank our sponsor, as we couldn't do this without them. Our first sponsor today is Disto Labs, your partner in modern digital transformation. We specialize in mentorship, consulting, training, and staff augmentation for enterprise organizations. Find out more at distolabs.com or send us an email at hi@disto.com. Do you find keeping up with the constantly evolving technology struggle? And do you want to bring your team up to speed on one of the latest technologies? Disto Labs offer personalized training programs to suit your organizational needs, ensuring you and your company stay on the leading edge. Contact us at hi@disto.co to set up your complimentary needs assessment. Before we move on, it's also time to remind everyone that on the third Thursday of every month, we run the Vue Meetup online. We've always got fantastic speakers. Today, we're going to use the Vue Meetup website to actually do some of the demo. So we're going to see which one of the speakers for the upcoming event that is going to be in 2 weeks Thursday. And I really suggest you to go on vuemeetup.com and register so you can get your link for the next event. Today's session is going to be called Debug in Vue, Quick Tips and Tricks. So if you have been with us and if you actually, if you followed the journey that we had for the last 6 weeks, we actually went through different aspects of Vue, and we learned the very basic of Vue in our first session. We mastered the state management, so we introduced Vuex and how to work state management when you have to and when you shouldn't use state management. Then we introduced the PWA part of Vue. We learned how to do unit testing, and we introduced the very basic unit testing using the Vue test utils. And then last week we took our application and we deployed it on AWS using Amplify. And then we did data storage. We implemented GraphQL. We implemented sign-in. So we've done quite a lot of things, and we went through this together. Throughout the session, I was always using small different debugging techniques. So as you may have seen, things don't always go right to anybody. And today we're probably no different because it's a live demo, so things always go a little bit wrong. And it's important that you know how to fix things. So today's session is actually going to be on me sharing the tips to you on how I actually go about and learn and trying to find the mistakes and trying to find the bugs. We should say that Vue is a very good tool because most of the time if there is a mistake, you usually know pretty quickly where the mistake is. So if there is a wrong in naming, or if you're missing something, or if you're passing the wrong argument, Vue is very good to give you to provide you a really good errors. For example, it may tell you, you are supposed to pass a string, you pass an array, or mixins are supposed to be array, you pass a string. So it's usually very good in providing you all the input and information that you may need. But it's also important to know how to do things if Vue by himself is not enough. I also want to remind everyone that all these videos are actually on YouTube in our playlist. So if you missed any of them and you would like to go through, please don't forget to go and catch up. And again, if you do have any questions on the actual videos, reach out either to myself directly on Twitter, or you can actually just contact Disto Media, Disto Labs, and we will more than happy support you in getting up to speed and getting even better with this fantastic framework. So as you know, most of these sessions are hands-on. So this is going to be the last slide. And what we're going to do today, we're going to cover 5 different debugging techniques, or 5 different parts in which we can debug. We're going to cover how to debug Vuex, how to debug the router, how to debug components, so how to actually analyze the components and things like that. We're going to see how to debug, how to run the debugger in VS Code. So this is something that, if you were used to do, JavaScript in the time of jQuery, it was very simple. You will open up the debugger and you were able to just put breakpoints wherever you want. Nowadays, because of the compilation and everything that happened behind the scene and minification, it's a bit more complex to actually achieve that. So today we're going to see how we can go back to basic and be able to put debugger when necessary. And lastly, I'm also gonna share a couple of tips on the way I can actually the way I can actually share debug Chrome itself. So this is not Vue related. I could actually spend 6-7 hours explaining you Chrome debugging or the debugger tool of Chrome, but today I'm just going to give you 1 or 2 points that can really help when you are in need while developing a Vue application. Sorry, I need to close this because it's I had quite a few notifications within the headphones. So let's start. You may be familiar with our application. We had a simple blog post application. So we were loading some information. We were able to get new information in. And description. As you can see, we did not spend any time whatsoever in actually applying any CSS. So, I do apologize on the look of this. No UX, and, we just had a few hours. So we do have an application, the application up and running, and the application had a couple of components. You had a post component, and you also had a create new post component. So it was very simple. Today, we're also going to use the actual Vue Meetup website. Because in our website, we've not introduced the router. So we would not be able to go through and actually see how to debug and check the router. So we're going to have to analyze the Vue Meetup that is also being built on Vue. The first part is going to be components. Okay, so we're going to share how to go through and analyze the component, make sure that the component is actually rendered, make sure that the properties passed to the component are the correct one, and see what we can and we cannot change. If you're not familiar with the tool I'm going to use, I'm highly recommend it because you are in need of using it. And the first one we're going to introduce, the first tool we're going to use is the Vue.js Devtools. So this is this has been created. One of the guys that actually works for the core team is a great tool. It's open source. If you do want to go and if you want to do any contribution to it, GitHub is there. There are some issues, some of them that are actually quite simple to implement and start. At the end of the day, it's just a little JavaScript tool, so it's very simple to get your hands dirty in it. But it's probably the most important tool if you're ever developing in Vue. The Vue Devtools, I think, is available for Chrome and for Firefox, if I'm not mistaken. Oh yeah, for a Chrome, Firefox, and also a standalone Electron. I was not aware of that. This provides you insightful information for everything Vue related. So as we will see, we're going to analyze quite a few of these tabs. So we're going to have the component one, we're going to have Vuex, we're going to have router, Vuex, and we're going to go through all of them because this is mostly some of the most important, as I mentioned, it's the most important tool that you can actually have. So to install it, you can actually just find it on. You can actually just find it on Google, or you can just follow the post that I'm shared within the within the chat. You install it on Chrome, and when it is installed, you will have a little Vue icon on the top right hand side. The icon is going to check if there is any Vue.js detected on the site. Bear in mind that if you build your application in with the build settings, so with production settings, you will not be able to use the debugging tool because the debugging tool will just work for debug purposes. So I'm going to go back to our application, and as you can see, as soon as we go on this application, our Vue page is actually colored up, and it says a Vue is detected. So if you open the dev tool, you will see the Vue panel. So we're going to open the dev tool. Guys, let me know if it's too small. I think it's the same size that I use every week, but let me know if it's too small. So when we open up the debugger now, as mentioned by the debugger, the Vue tool over here, if I go here in one of the extra tab, I can see Vue. When clicking Vue, you are you're in a familiar place. So very simply, you just have a selection of tabs over here, and then you have the main the main windows at the bottom there. I usually like it to have it at the bottom, so I'm going to be there. The first part that we're going to see, as I mentioned, is going to be the component. So just to give a little recap to people that were missed probably other week, so they were not aware of it. So if we go through our components, we can see that our app have a so our app has a create post. This is the component that is allowing us to create the post, and then yes, a for each loop they go through and creates posts. So the post have a property of title and a property of description, and create post does not accept any properties as such. When you actually go in the create post, we can see that is actually triggering some actions on start, and yes, some data as well. If we go in the post itself, we also see that there are some properties, as I mentioned before. There's a data of full text, and there's also some computed properties. So all this is within our components, and let's see what we can actually see within the component itself. Let me check if anyone would. Good. So we're going here, and what we can see straight away that we got a tree of our application. So you may be very familiar to have a normal DOM tree. What we actually have in Vue is it's a Vue tree. So what you see here, each of these is going to represent the component or a component that you may have. I have removed AWS. So as you may remember, last week we went through AWS, and I've removed that just because that will make this a bit harder to understand if it's the first time that you go through, because it adds a couple of extra components or layers that may not be necessary for the beginning. So very similarly to when you look through in an element, in the element tabs, if you go in the Vue tabs, as you go through, you will be able to see your components as well. So again, you're able to actually click and see the components as you go through. So we have a root component, we have our app component, and then we have 3 post component and a create post. It's very important that you know that you can see each of the posts generated, because each of them will have its own data. So if you want to play around with the data, that is a standalone of the, a standalone variable for the given instance, is very beneficial to be able to change one or the other accordingly. So if we want to analyze this, let's go up. We go the first post one. If I click on it, the first thing we'll see is that on this tab, that is the component tab, it provides us all the information of this given component. First, you can see the properties passed. Second, you can see the data. And thirdly, you can see the computed properties that are actually provided for this button, for this component right now. So you can see that full text is false, so button text is actually saying show more. If I click this, you can see that everything changes straight away. So everything is reactive, even this is actually reactive. So behind the scene, this tool uses the Vue API. So it just goes through the Vue, it checks your components, and it checks the data and properties. So everything that you will see on the top, you will also see at the bottom here. This is a very simple app, so we were able to actually go through the tree quite easily. But there may be time where it's quite complicated for you to grab a component because there's lots of things around. So what you can do, you can use this. So if you click it, select component on the page. Again, very similarly to the way you'll do it on the element tabs, where you do this and you select something. In the Vue instances, you can do the same. You can click this, and you can, let me remove this. And you can actually go through and it will just highlight specific components. So in this case, it's highlighting this post. If I click it, it's gonna, let's do a different one because it was the same one. If I click here, you will see that it's gonna highlight the post that, that I would have just clicked. When you see this this information now, this is quite small. It's a very small component. It doesn't have much, so it's quite simple to go through. There may be components that can be very complicated, or sometimes there are some wrapping components that have loads of data within that, and you know what you're looking for, but just hard to find out. So when that's the case, you can actually just easily filter through by using the filter provided above here. So what is important to realize is that you cannot just see the data here. You even have the ability to change some of the data. If you may remember from the past weeks, we mentioned that the data, when you have a component, when you have a component has the data that is private variable. So a component itself can change this. A property is usually passed over by the parent, and the component itself is not able to change it. If we go back to the tool here, this is actually the same actually happened within here as well. When you actually go and see, if I highlight on on these properties, that actually tells you this, if they're required, the type, and all the different information you provided. If you click on the three dots, you can just copy the value. So imagine if this was a very big JSON object, you will be able to copy the value and then spread, write it wherever you want and save it wherever you want. When we go and hover on the data, we're actually able to actually change the value. So in our case, we could change it by clicking the edit icon over here, or in this case, because it's a Boolean, you can just click it. And again, I think it was post number 3. So if you go to post number 3, let's go to a different post because post number 3 is too small. So if you go to post number 1, if I click here, you can see that you are able to change the data without having to actually do it by dynamically. Again, this case may seem very like a very simple thing to do, but I can guarantee you there are cases where the only way for you to change this, you will have to do an API request, or you have to click a button, or you have to complete a form, you have to do something that will take too long, okay? And it's important when you develop that you need to try and reduce the scope of your development. So say, for example, I'm trying to work out on, let's say that this one is a submit button. They need to do an API request. I need to see how it looks when it's loading, and I want to work around it. And let's say that this one was actually, there was a loading data here. It would be very hard for me to work with the loading because usually when you click something, the loading is very, wouldn't say immediate, but it's too small. And, it's very hard to go through that, and you don't want to hard code things within the code. So what you can do, you can load up this application. You can come here, you can just say loading through and see the loading state. And then you could work within the HTML on the actual loading state. For example, in this case, I can go here, I can add, I can click on, sorry, that was too quick. When you go here, you can actually click on inspect DOM. And when you click this, it's going to go straight into the DOM of the given component. So if, for example, I want to change the, let's say this is a loading state and you want to change something, you will be able to do it because you know precisely what is happening over there. So this is a powerful feature. You're not able to change properties just because, as I mentioned, usually properties are passed over by the parents. So if we go back to the parent, again, you will see that this one is a view expanding, so you're not able to change this either. So what do? There is a possibility for you to change this, and it is in the settings. So if you go into settings, you will see that you are able to edit editable props. So if you want to, you will override the normal behavior and allow you to edit the props. It is important to realize that when you do this, it's going to print the warnings, because if you may remember, if we try to change the properties directly from a component, it will tell you a property was changed. You are not supposed to do that because the component is not supposed to change properties. So let's try and see if this works. So if I go here now, that one is called post 1. And as you can see, it's going to be post 1 modified. If we go back to the console, you can see, as I mentioned before, very good error messaging. So if you would have done this within your code, it would have told you, look, avoid mutating a prop directly, since the value will be overwritten whenever the parent's component is rerendered. So very good error messaging for you, but in this case, it's an error message that we were expecting because we just enabled the feature in the plugin. Just go back to make sure there is no question. Good. So this is our first and foremost important tool. I've worked with other tools such as React and Angular, and I should probably say that React is actually getting much better. So they've taken loads of insight from this one, but the last couple of months, or if we would probably compare this last year, this was the best debugging tool that we had across the different framework. And I'm happy that all the other frameworks are catching up on this, because it really supports you in your development skill, in your development. If you go again, you can see that if we go in the create post accept a post that is an object. So this was our default data, and it doesn't show anything else. The main reason it doesn't show anything else is because all the other values are are related to Vuex. So if we go back to application and we go to create post, you can see that the only thing we have is data, and then the methods that are not actually shown there are Vuex. Also, if it wouldn't have been declared in Vuex, you still wouldn't have seen it because this view does not show the methods for you. Very simply, you can change the individual entry of the object, or you can change the whole object. Let's go back. Let's make sure I've not forgotten anything. Just wanted to remind you all that it's computed properties. In this case, is a very simple value, and also in this case, we can see the values on top here, so it's quite simple to understand what we're doing. But there may be cases where your computed is actually a something that will provide you logical terms. So, for example, is the first user, or is the user authenticated? So things that you don't actually see on the forefront, and it's important for you to be able to actually go through and see straight away all the information within your computed properties, and also make sure that you can see them changing as you expect. So in our case, we know that the computed properties is going to change. The button text is going to change depending from the value of full text. So you can easily go here and change it, and you can see that the show less, show more, show less, show more actually changes straight away. Very powerful, as I mentioned, is in this case, I just give you a very simple example, but when you go in details, it's way more than that. So this was components for you, a very small introduction, a little bit of a discussion there. Next, we're going to have a very quick one on routing. So the routing is this button over here. As you can see, there's no router detected, so there's nothing is actually coming up from there. And for that reason, we have to use a different website, that is the the Vue.meetup.com. We're going to open the debugger here. Again, you can see that Vue was detected here, so we were able to see that. We go in Vue, in the Vue tab, and we are going to click on the route. On the route entry on the right, I would say tab. The router is very useful because there are times where things happen too quickly, or you may developing the router. You are creating a new page, and you click on the button, and you don't go to the actual page. If you want to debug that manually, you will have to put console log everywhere. You will have to put you will try to put the debugger everywhere. By using the router, you will be able to see all the values that are passed from and to, and you will be able to analyze them and see if they are the one that you expect. So I'm going to show you, for example, in this case, because we just loaded up the page, when you click in here, it's just telling you that it's going from the path 0 to the path 0. So that means the page is actually loaded up. It tells you the path, the full path, all the parameters that were passed, the name. So we're going to go and see the router now, because we haven't introduced it. I'll give you a little summary. So the name of this view is home, and then you also tell you, have I matched anything? And I say, yes, I've matched one within the router and within your your router JavaScript file, and it's going to be this path. That is an empty path with a date value that is an optional. So again, if you didn't know anything about this website, you will already know that there is a possibility to actually pass a date towards the website heading as a parameter. And in this case, it's been undefined. But if you would have passed it, there may have been some logic behind the scene. Again, very simply, if you would have done something, there has been cases. I'll talk about personal experience when I was expecting the right page to actually show up. And then when you go and analyze this, you can see that you've done something wrong. Either this path was not found because of the way you registered the path, or something different may have happened. But by going through here, you will be able to see all the information. What we're going to do, we're going to click some, we're going through a different page now. So we're going to go to the attend now. If I go to the attend now, you can see that it changes the pages. When you go down here, you can see the whole link that we went through. You can see the name of the page up here. So this is called the register page, and the time in which we went through. again, very like before, you're able to see where we came from and where we're going. So we don't care about the from because we already analyzed it, and we're seeing the top two. So the two is a straight path. So again, we're going through a register. We got information over here and a date. And when we actually open up the parameter, we can see that we're expecting two parameters, one of a date and one of the YouTube ID. And then when we actually go here and open up, you're able to see I found the path to be the register / YouTube ID that is required and date that is required. So again, very simply, you will see that this path is what we're expecting. So if I remove this, you will see that it's not working. So let's say, for example, that this is something that you encounter, you're going through, the application is not working. You will be able to go here. You can see that the path that is actually loaded up doesn't find anything. And you can see what you passed through the path. So say, wait a minute, I went to the register, this is a value, but I'm expecting more than that. And this is where you're actually able to debug information for you. So we go back to the old one. Yeah. In here, just to show you how they're mapped up, I'm going to load up the file. Give me a second. I'll open up the folder for you. So if you ever work with any tool, for example, whichever, if you work in PHP and C# or everything, you always have, you're always working by registering the route. So you always need to declare and say, if someone goes on the main site, I want this page to load, or if someone goes on a different site, I want this other page to load. Vue router is very similar, and it actually follows the same convention. And I'm going to show you the router. One second, I'll open it up and then I'll put it on the right screen. Okay. So we're here. So a router is as such. So you declare the router, you load everything up. So we're not going to go into much detail because it's lots to cover. But the idea is that you declare your different pages. So in our case, you can see that there is a page called register. So you're able to go to the page by either say just register and passing the parameter, or go to a specific path with where all this data is going to automatically be wrapped out. And when this data is found, then it knows which page to actually load. So as you can see, there's a page for CLP, a page for privacy, and then you go down all the way to home where there is data that is optional. As I mentioned, router is quite simple, but it's very powerful when you need to debug some of the routing experience. 100%, you will use it. I use it on a daily basis, and you probably use it as well. Let's go through. The next one is going to be Vuex. For Vuex, we go back to our site. Let me see if there's any questions. No, if you got questions, guys, just don't forget to just write them out. So for Vuex, we are able to go to the second tab. So this is the Vuex sign. Vuex, it is extremely, I wouldn't say the word powerful again. It is really informative. So when you actually are working with Vuex, it is very important that you know how to use this tab properly. Also, it is very important that you learn how to use Vuex properly. If you may remember from last time when we talked about Vuex, we went in the store. I mentioned to you guys that when you actually run Vuex, when you create Vuex and create all the actions and mutation and getters and everything, it's always suggested for you to create actions and for the actions to create individual mutations. Okay, so you shouldn't actually go and declare the mutation directly. You should always go through actions and then do the mutation. Vuex, so the debugging part of Vuex, actually just give you all information about the mutation that you've done. So because Vuex is because the debugger is looking at all the changes that happen to the state, and the state is just changed by the mutations. The mutations are the ones that are posted out. It's very, very important also for you to realize that you're able to roll back. So you're able to go back into back in time with Vuex. What that means is that when you actually go here, you're able to go through all the everything that happened in our little application. So you can see that there was a base state. you can see the set posts have been declared, and you can see that add post has been declared. Very, the same way as we did with the component. On the right-hand side, you can see all the information. For example, with the add post, you can see that a payload has been a payload was passed off with the description and title. You can see that the type of the mutation was add post. And then you're able to see the state that was actually produced by at the end of this mutation. I'm not going to go into details of being able to change, because as you can see, very similarly to the date of the component, you are able to actually change the individual state straight away. You're not able to do mutation or getters, but you're able to change the state, because if you remember, the state matches out to the data of a component. So this is the private part, the private variables of Vuex. So you're able to change it, but what is the important part is not just being able to see that, but being able to go back. So what you can do, if you can see here, it tells you commit this mutation. And what that means is that if I will go back here, for example, so if you go up here, you can see that we got 3 posts, one of which called today description. If you go here and you click time travel to this state, what it's going to do is going to remove this mutation. Yeah, it's going to go back in time. So that means that our state will not have these changes anymore, and we'll lose the last information there. So if I go back here, what happened there? 1 second. This works 100%. So we had the new one. We actually go back in time there. Okay. As I think it's because we changed the value in the debugger, so it wasn't matched up anymore. So just to redo it, because I did it too quickly to test. So we load everything. You can see the base state is actually, there's nothing. So on the base state, the post has an array of 0. Then when everything loaded up from our API, we're able to see information be loaded in. So again, you will be able to see that there was a payload of 2 items being added to the set post. And then what we're going to do, we're going to submit these. And as soon as I click submit, you can see that there's a mutation that has been created of add post. And the mutation is default description, default title, and is of type add post. When you go here, you're able to load the state. So by loading state, you will say, okay, show me what is the state right now. And you can see there's a post with an array of 3 now. Well, if I went back here, there was a post on an array of 2. So you're able to go back and see how things changes. If I go back here and I click on the time travel, you can see that the 3rd post has actually been removed. But if I go back here again, I can commit it again, and I will be able to see the 3rd post. Again, in our case, it's a very small application. There's not much going on, but I can guarantee you that when you have a very big application with loads, a very big a very big Vuex state with different modules, this is a very, very informative tools. As I mentioned before, it's important that you learn that you're not going to be able to do anything within what happened here. And actually, you don't want to do it. So I'll give an idea of the set post. We don't really, or add post, say for example, the add post, you don't really want to go through and have to do an API call every time. But by using this tool, you're able to override that information, because you're able to say, hey, look, I went through and I clicked to, I was able to commit the information again, and a new post was created. And again, if you revert it back to something, so we go back to where it was. If you go back here, you want to commit this again, you can commit this mutation. It will commit the mutation itself, so nothing will happen to the action. So it's not talking about action. It doesn't know anything that happened here. We're just talking about mutation. We're just talking about anything that actually can create, change the state itself. So in our case, if I want to add, so there is a 3rd post here, as you can see. If I want to add another one here, I can just say, I want to commit this mutation. It's going to commit it. Okay. The one thing that there is a bug, and there is also a, if I'm not wrong, there's a story in GitHub, is that when you click that, then you lose the old state, all the different state. But apart from that, again, is a very, very, very good tool to use for state. It's more informative than you may expect, and also don't forget you're able to change things accordingly here. So let's try something. So if we go back, so we want to copy this value, okay? We travel back to this when there was nothing. So again, if we want to work on our loading state, look, the loading state is there because the post is 0. So there's no post. So we went back in time where the base state was actually 0. But if, for example, you want to work around having some posts, but we don't have an API, or we don't know what to do yet, what you can actually do, you can go here straight away, and you can just add a new value. You should be able to adjust the object there. And for some reason, okay, let me revert to this. Let me remove this. Let me remove this. Today is not playing ball. I do apologize. He's not playing ball. We are able to change the data over here. I worked in the past when the data was changed here and everything up in here. It may be something to, it will be one of those things that may need to be debugged. So I'm just trying one more time. Oh, it's working if I change the game. So let's try again. Empty, yay, it works. So you're able to change the post over here. We're able to add it. For example, in our case, it was an array, if I'm not mistaken. And then what is telling me? Oh, is it JSON on an array? Add post, and our posts is an object. So you're able to add the posts. As you can see, we got quite a few posts now. We remove them, we add them. I got no idea what is going on there. But very powerful tool. Also very informative when there are times when you need to make sure that everything is the way you wanted it. So you did some action, you want to make sure that you got a state of authorized, that you want to make sure that you clicked something, you consented on something. So you're able to see here your state, your actual state straight away. You don't have to go back in the code and put the console log everywhere and debugger everywhere. You should really always try to solve your solution by information being posted here first, and then you should go back to the code and actually try to do the debugging. So I need to move forward, otherwise we will not be able to cover everything. Oh yes, one thing that I had noted down that is very important, meaningful names are extremely important. You want to really have names in your mutation that 100% tell you straight away what is going on. So in our case, we got set posts. You want to say something like, I don't know, trigger, if you want to trigger the side nav, you want to say, trigger side nav state or things like that. So the mutation needs to be very descriptive of what is going to change and how it's going to change. And the reason for that is because you may have a list of hundreds or 200 of this mutation over here, and it's very important you will be able to see through what is happening. So there may be cases where you may expect one to happen before the others. So I've seen cases where you may go here, you may have an action that have multiple, an action that have multiple commitments and things like that, but they may be things such as async await or something that is that expect promises that happens before or after. So let's say in your case, in our case, hey, we want set post to be loaded first and then set post show. Being able to using this tool will allow you to actually make sure that everything actually happens in the way that you expect, and that everything that is actually then the state, you can actually analyze the state as it gets through to make sure that everything changes accordingly. Again, I use this number of times to actually solve my issues, and it's really, really beneficial. You're also able to change here the module you're using. So if you got different modules within Vuex, you're able to roll down to just one specific module. And again, that's very beneficial if you got a lot of different modules. So I'm working in a project now where we have around 16 modules, and the state is really, really used. So it's very important to be able to drive through and get all the information from there. Moving on next. I do apologize for the little hiccups over there, but we're going to move next to what I probably like the most, that is being able to actually debug Vue the old way. So as I mentioned before, if it was the whole days, you would just go here, you would put a debug, and then everything was nice and simple. You can still do it. You probably have to go through quite a few files and try to find them and try to put the debugger and so on and so forth. But what we're going to do today is actually setting up Vue to be debugged from Visual Studio Code. So if you have not done it yet, you can actually do it with any different Node application you actually have. So what we're doing today is no different to what you'll have to do in a different case for different applications. So very beneficial to get started with you. There is a very simple guide here. Okay. By the way, hi everyone. I know that you do write in the chat. I got it in different monitors, so I don't look every now and then. But if you want to leave question, leave it there, because every now and then I'm leaving. I'm keeping an eye there. So what we're going to do is setting up debugging in VS Code. This is fantastic. So what we will be able to do later on is what we want to try and achieve is, if we go in our view, what we want to try and achieve is being able to say, hey, you know what? I want to go in a component, in a create post, let's say in the post component, and I want to stop when this method gets called. So adding a breakpoint, that's all we want to do. And it's not very complicated, so let's go. We're going to follow this guide. That is the one that I shared in the chat, and there are 3 different steps. Number 1 is we need to tell our application to actually create the source map. Bear in mind that when you create the source map, it's actually going to slow down some of the development time that it takes to actually create the source map. If you want to have more information what Devtools actually is about, is one of the WordPress plugin, WordPress option, and its ability for you to create a source map. We are going to use source map of equals source map, I think. How is it? Yeah, source dash map. And if you actually go over here, you can see the source dash map is the slowest, but it provides you the original source then afterwards. So it is necessary for our debugger to be able to put debugging tips in there. So what we're doing, go back in our tutorial. The first step is in our Vue.config.js. We need to add this data. So taking this, we're going here. I do not actually have, oh, I do have one. Yeah. So I go here. I don't need the module export, it's already got it. So we're going to add configure webpack, and I'm going to add the web tool. Now I should actually stop the application. I need to run it again. So step number 1 done. Step number 2 is to actually, I would say step number 2 is to actually set up a debugging configuration in our app. So if you are not familiar with it, when you actually go in Visual Studio Code, on the left-hand side, you have debug. So in debug, you're able to create configuration for different debugging strategies. So if you had PHP, you can set up PHP debugging. I had set it up to actually debug C# in the past. So you're able to actually go and select an environment, actually create configuration file for you. Configuration files are saved within a folder called .vs code in here. And if you're not have it ignored, you should ignore that folder because you don't really want to push it up to the server. If you actually go and see, if I click on this button, you can see that I have a cron and a node. I think this is actually showing up because I have an extension installed that I'm going to show you now. But at the end of the day, what this does, as I mentioned, is it creates a launch.json file within a folder called VS Code. So we go back here in our code. We go back at the very top. You can see that there's a .vs code folder and there's a launch.json file. You can have different launching strategies for a specific project. So in this case, it's just creating one of type Chrome, request launch Chrome again, and then it's expecting the URL to be 8080 and just the folder to be the workspace folder. You can change all these settings, but if we go back to our file, you can see that the mappings are just slightly different. So we're going to copy this. So this will allow us to actually start either in Chrome or in Firefox. And I'm going to paste it here. And I'm going to save. Now, after you create a launch file, you will be able to actually go in the debugger and you will see them here. So when you actually go, if you're in a specific project that have a launch file, you will see one of them over here. If you will just run this, it will actually fail because there's one missing part. So as I mentioned, there were 3 parts. Number 1, setting up the source map. Number 2, creating a launch file. And number 3 is installing an extension. The extension is called Debugger for Chrome. Okay, so let me see if I can get. Okay. So if I go here, Debugger for Chrome, we need to install this extension on our Visual Studio Code. And when we install this extension, we should be able to then we're able to then link with link Chrome with VS Code. So we go back here. Just a quick recap. I do know that I discussed quite a few things. First of all, we created a launch.json file. We saved some of the information from the guide that I shared, but the information just shared the name, the endpoint. So 8080 is Vue about, if, for example, in this case, in my case that I was running 2 applications, the second one was 8081, so you'll have to change to 81. The root is telling you where the information is within the src folder, and then it's telling you where the map, the source map is. Same information for Firefox, just slightly different, but overall the same setup. Secondly, we have a Vue.config file, configuration to actually have a source map. And lastly, we just need to debug. Before you run the debugger, it's important to know that you need to have the application running. So we are going to check if the application runs anywhere. Yeah. So application is running. I'm gonna copy this and put it on this slide. So the application is running, so you can see the application. What we want to do now is actually start in debugger. So we go back here, we click on our debugger, and we click the start. Just so you know, you're able to do F5 as well, but I usually always like to come here and click start. So the debugging experience actually began. So it's loading up a page as well, but the application needs to be running. So it's important that you need to do npm run serve first before you can actually debug. When we go back to our code, nothing stopped yet. It's important to realize that if you would like to, you can stop on different exception, but all that has been removed. So if we go back here and we go through our files, and we did put a breakpoint in, was it posts? Yeah, okay. So we want to put a breakpoint over here. So that means that when you ever added it, oh, I think it's because, sorry. The live demo, always the case. Oh, I think I saved the save post too. Let's go back to the store. Yep. Okay, let's see. Yeah, finally, everything is working. So I put a debugger on toggle text. So don't forget the toggle text happened when we click the button. So if we go back to our Chrome and we just click the button. Oh, that's very sad. Let's stop. Let's restart. I like how these things, guys, always happen when we actually do a live demo. So I use this on a daily basis, and today it's not working. This is so sad. Let's see something else. In the future, guys, you will actually find out that there was a real curse for for when you do a live demo. It's not a joke. Yes, to be. I don't know if this is actually breaking everything because of the icon missing. Let's see. What was it? Yeah, the service worker. The icon, the main, the manifest file. Well, it doesn't work. Save. Hey, something stopped. Hallelujah. It's not the file where I wanted to stop, but if we go back to our application, we can see that everything stops straight away. And it's because when we actually run our application, there's a permission. So we actually ask the permission to send notifications. So if you were here when we set up the PWA, we were running permission. We were asking for a permission. And this is the line of code that was asking for the permission. So right now we stopped here. We were able to see that we are actually able to, to see very simply the same way you do in Chrome. You're able to see all the information over here, and you're able to continue, pass over, go back, and so on and so forth. So I'm going to run through the application. Let's see if we're able to actually put a debugger again now. No, there must be something. Okay, let's see if the add post works. No. Either there must be something that is breaking up the link between the source map. So I don't think the source map are actually working. That's why I stopped on the register service worker, because it doesn't need a source map, while the rest actually is in necessity of having a source map. So it's not actually loading up. Of course, that one will not load. Let's see if there is something else. Do we still have the logs? No, the logs was not loaded anyway. This is the only one that stops. Oh, it stopped there as well. So again, you're able to stop in reality. So I do have this set up to mostly every project I do. But let me see. So I do this for every project I do. So after you set up, it's going to be, it's bread and butter. So it's going to work straight away. You're just going to press F5 and the debugging is going to start. And everything that you actually do in in Chrome, you will be able to do it straight away over here as well. So all the information you'll be able to see, you'll be able to pass through, pass over. So it's it's really beneficial for you to be able to do this instead than have to try and find the file within the source map over here, because that would have been a bit more complicated. Something else as well is the last point that I want to cover is log point. So I don't know if any of you have actually heard of log point. I heard about this no more than a month and a half ago, but I'm actually using it so much. So what log point does is provide you the ability to, I think this is actually breaking it, but what log point does, it actually provides you the ability to just do a console log wherever you want. So as you've seen with the debugger, we had to stop something before we were actually able to see it. So we had to really stop the application by running. But usually we just want to run a console log. So if you are like me, you probably have filled up your file with maybe that was the wrong part. So you probably filled up your application with console log, loading, console log, loaded, and then you probably added some state here as well, so you're able to see the posts. Okay, so if you like me, you like to debug by being in control and knowing things around, using console log will be very beneficial. What you do, you can actually in Chrome, so you don't just have to do Visual Studio Code. We'll try Visual Studio Code, but in case it doesn't work, we can do it in Chrome straight away. In Chrome, apologies, stop now that. Okay, in Chrome, we can actually just go through, you go in source, you go whichever file actually interests you, that you are interested in console logging. So let's go to fake API. So what you would like to say is you right click here. Yeah. Let's see, this one is component. No, I hate Webpack. Okay, so you go where the data that you actually want. So the toggle text, for example, you do right click, you're able to do add log point. So this is just doing a console log. So for example, you're able to, if you in console log, you're able to put comma and then put values afterwards. This is completely the same. So as you can see here, you're able to say X is, for in my case, I can say, toggling text. Now there's a log point there. If I toggle text, nothing wants to work today. So if I toggle text now, you can see that it's actually console logging. It's very important because you don't actually have to, to actually stop the application. So, and also you don't have to add data. You don't have to add, unwanted things within your code. So how many times you have to add a console log, or you have to add a debugger just for testing purposes, and then when you went back here, you forgot to remove it before you did the PR, and part of the PR was remove this console log. That happened to everyone, and usually it's it will be impossible if it doesn't happen to you. Well done, but it does happen, and it's just because we develop our application by doing loads of different different debugging. And doing this will actually support you in actually getting the information over. Also, I want to try something else, but I know it's not going to work today. So as I mentioned before, you're able to pass more information. So if I want to do this dot full text, you should actually be able to also see the full text. Now, if this is going to work today, I don't know. Yay, you're able to see that it's true, it's false. So you're able to really pass everything that you would have passed. Again, very, very beneficial, very, very helpful. I've been using this since I learned about it last month. I've actually been using it. So when I develop something, I'll actually go here and add information over here. There are just 2 minutes left, and then I'm going to check if there's any comments. But there are just one thing I want to share, I want to mention, is there are cases where something happened and you really don't know why. You can go through the application, you can go through everything I've shown you, you can go through the debugging, but something is not clear. So for example, a button may disappear or something is happening, and you want to understand who is actually triggering that. If you don't know, you're able to actually, within the element tab, you're able to stop or break on specific action. So in our case, you would be able to break on sub-tree modification or a node removal or an attribute modification. So say, for example, I don't know what is adding a post to this list. So I'm going through the actual list. So let me see. Okay, so I'm going through here, over here, guys. I'm going through my app, and I want to break on a sub3 modification. So what this is going to do now is going to it's going to add a debugger whenever something happened to do this element. And sub3 modification means that something happened within here. So if I go here and add a component, you will see that it's actually stopped straight away. You may straight away mention that it's very hard for us to understand what is happening because it's a view.runtime. But if you go to the right-hand side here, you can see that there's a call stack. And usually a call stack will always end up to what actually happens, what actually triggered information. So in our case, you'll be able to see and wait until there's no view runtime file anymore. You can see that everything has been triggered by the hard post. I've used this many times. Again, you click on the hard post, you click the debugger, you'll be able to debug it. I've used this many times to find information and find actions, or usually when it's an application that I don't know, so something that I'm not aware of, it's quite simple to say, oh, I would want to understand what is actually doing it, or I want to understand what is actually making this loading state. You right-click on it, you say on-tree modification, or you can say on attribute modification. For example, if you know that the style changes, if a color changes, you do that, it breaks straight away, you will be able to see it. Well, finally, there's one more thing that is the network tab. Again, as I mentioned before, I can speak for hours on just the debugger itself, nothing view related. But there are cases where you may want to see, again, what triggers an API. So an API may have been triggered a couple of times. You want to understand what is happening, when it's happening. Each API, each endpoint, each request actually has an initiator being written down. When you actually go in the initiator, usually you will always find out where it happened within your application. So if it was raised by Vuex or by something, you will be able to see the file. And again, you click on it and you will be able to then put the breakpoint. These are very, wouldn't say advanced techniques, but things that can really help you in specific cases. So I wanted to share them with you as my pro tips for today's session. I do apologize for what didn't happen. As always, there's always something that doesn't work. But I really hope that overall you've seen different aspects of debugging. So again, you can add the console log if you want. You can use the log point. You can add it in Visual Studio Code. I can guarantee you, after you add it properly, it does work. I use it on a daily basis. You can check the state, you can check the component, you can change some of it. Very good for developing purposes. But overall, you're just seeing how things are done. Also, don't forget, Vue Devtools is actually open source, so there are some issues that they need help. So if you go there, the Vue guys are very good to help you and getting your application, your pull requests actually sorted and merged in. So, again, another reason why you may get interested and start to use this tool is for the fantastic community and possibilities that there are out there. Very quickly, I'll go through the comments. There's just one comment for Jean-David. Do you have a written version of this setup? Yes. So I actually already shared it, but I'm going to share it again. It's actually here. You can just follow this, and I also shared about the plugin that you need to add, the debugging for Chrome. It does work, and again, it's not just for Vue. It works for everything. The only thing you have to change if you use a different tool is you need to make sure that the source map is generated, and you need to make sure that the endpoint is correct, because now it's set up to 8080. That is the Vue application. Other than that, everything is great. Today is the last session, guys, of the JavaScript. Let me put. Okay. So today is the last session of the JavaScript marathon. So I've been with you for 6 different sessions. It's been a great pleasure to be around. I really hope you learned by going through this. 6 hours are not enough in reality to do a full application, but we did cover so many things. And, when it was back in the day when I was learning, this kind of session really helped me to get me going. Don't forget, if you need to get in touch with me, my hashtag on my hashtag on Twitter is Zelig880. Check it out, Zelig880. I'm a very friendly guy, happy to to answer you every now and then. I also do free code reviews, so please get in touch. If you are in love and you like Vue.js, you 100% will get my support, because I really like this tool. It's been great to have you around, and I really hope to see you in the next and upcoming event. Bye, guys.